Imagine this. You're in your 40s, maybe even older. The past 2 decades have been spent building your career, nurturing your family, paying off mortgages, and planning for a stable future. Every morning, you follow a familiar routine. Go to work, get things done, come back home. Then one day, that email appears, or that unexpected meeting happens. We regret to inform you. And just like that, the stability you've spent your life building crumbles into thin air. Or worse, you still have a job, but every morning you wake up with an empty, chilling feeling. You look in the mirror, see the crow's feet around your eyes, a few gray hairs, and wonder, is this it? Can I still do something meaningful? We all love stories of comebacks, movies about underdogs rising up, self-help books promising a fresh start. But when you face that crossroads yourself, it's no longer inspiring. It's fear. It's sleepless nights calculating expenses. It's the worried look from your partner. It's the whisper in your head. At this age, who will hire me? Can I still learn something new? Society calls it a midlife crisis with a mocking smile, but I call it a second awakening, and no one illustrates the power of that awakening more clearly than Steve Jobs. However, Jobs' story didn't start in the spotlight. It began with a catastrophic downfall, a downfall that any one of us could see as the end. In 1985, Steve Jobs was 30 years old. Still young, but already a living legend. He was the face of the personal computer revolution, the father of Macintosh, a groundbreaking innovation. But behind the spotlight, Apple was a battlefield. The conflict between Jobs, with his perfect but autocratic vision, and John Sculley, the CEO Jobs had brought in from Pepsi, reached its peak. And then the unthinkable happened. The board of directors, the very people Jobs trusted, voted to fire the founder of the company. Let's stop at this moment. This wasn't just any employee being let go. This was a blow to identity. In his 2005 Stanford speech, Jobs described it. I was publicly fired. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it destroyed me. I really thought about running away from Silicon Valley. That feeling, perhaps many of us have experienced it, even on a smaller scale. It's not just financial worry. It's the feeling of betrayal. It's the extreme embarrassment in front of colleagues, friends, and family. It's the agonizing question of self-worth. If I'm no longer that director, that expert, then who am I? After many years, work has become part of our identity. Losing it feels like a house losing its foundation. Jobs fell into what he called the public failure state. He wandered around Europe trying to find meaning. He even thought about pursuing physics, a passion from his youth. This is the abyss, the place where most people would fall, or choose a safer, smaller path for the rest of their lives. But the real story begins here. After the shock, Jobs did something bold. He refused to disappear. But he didn't rush into a new venture right away. Instead, he entered a reinvention hiatus, the most important phase often overlooked in the lessons about him. With the money from his Apple stock, he founded Next, a computer company aimed at education and business. But at the same time, he made a seemingly crazy move, buying a small graphics division from George Lucas for $10 million. He named it Pixar. People laughed. From tech mogul to making animated films? This was not a random shift. It was a detox process. Being fired from Apple freed Jobs from his own shadow. At Next and Pixar, he was no longer Steve Jobs of Apple. He was a learner again, an investor, a supporter. And in this new role, he learned valuable lessons that youth success had never taught him. At Pixar, he learned to listen. He, known for his autocratic style, had to learn to respect and empower artists like John Lasseter. He realized that perfection sometimes comes from collaboration, not commands. He also learned a lesson in extreme patience. Pixar lost money for almost a decade. Jobs had to pump tens of millions of dollars from his own pocket to keep the company alive. In his late 30s and early 40s, he faced enormous financial pressure and relentless skepticism, but he persevered. He believed in a vision others didn't see. At Next, he continued pursuing technological perfection, but the product was too expensive and the market limited. Commercially, Next was a failure, but technologically, it was a masterpiece. The Next Step operating system later became the foundation for Mac OS and iOS. This taught Jobs a key lesson. Commercial failure doesn't mean intrinsic value is zero. Sometimes the seeds of the greatest successes sprout from the soil of apparent failure. This period, from 30 to 40, was Steve Jobs' greatest school. It taught him humility, patience, the art of delegation, and long-term vision. It transformed an arrogant genius into a mature leader. In 1996, Apple, Jobs' old spiritual child, was dying. The company was losing market share, its products were lackluster, and it was suffering heavy losses. In desperation, the new board decided to buy a modern operating system, and they found what they needed in Steve Jobs' Next. For $429 million, Apple acquired Next, and as fate would have it, Steve Jobs, at age 42, walked back into his old home, not as a proud victor, but as a much-anticipated savior. This time, Jobs was a different person. He was no longer the hot-headed young man. He carried with him the experience of a man who had tasted failure at Next, the patience of a long-term investor at Pixar, and the wisdom of someone who had been taught a humiliating life lesson. He looked at Apple and saw a company dying from chaos, dozens of overlapping product lines, no clear direction. The first lesson he applied was simplicity, the lesson of middle age. He drew a 4-box grid, desktop and laptop for casual users and professionals. He declared, "We will only do this." All other projects were cut. Hundreds of employees were laid off. These were painful decisions, but necessary. The young strive to expand, the experienced know how to focus. Then he met Johnny Ive, a talented designer who was disillusioned in the company. Jobs gave Ive creative power and said, "Let's make beautiful things together." This was the lesson of trust and collaboration learned from Pixar. And from that collaboration, the iMac was born in 1998, a translucent blue sphere, friendly, radically different from anything on the market. It didn't just sell, it declared Apple was back and it was thinking different. But the greatest journey was just beginning. All of Steve Jobs' peak career that shaped the world took place from age 40 to 56. In 2001, at age 46, he introduced the iPod. Not the first digital music player, but the first beautiful, simple device that turned music listening into an elegant experience. This wasn't groundbreaking technology, it was breakthrough design thinking and marketing, something only achieved after decades of market clashes and user understanding. In 2007, at age 52, he stepped onto the stage and introduced the iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. At 52, when many people are thinking about retirement, Jobs created a device that would change civilization, combining a phone, iPod, and internet browser. Where did this vision come from? It came from connecting the dots, the ability to see the links between computer technology, industrial design, user interfaces, and mobile entertainment needs. That ability was honed through decades of cross-industry experience, through both failure and success. In 2010, at 55, the iPad was released, creating an entirely new category of computer. All of these breakthrough innovations bore the mark of a middle-aged Steve Jobs, extreme focus on a few key products, patience to nurture ideas over many years, long-term vision far beyond quarterly reports, and above all, confidence in his honed intuition, something that youth often lacks.
He proved that 40s and 50s aren't the end of creativity. That's when creativity reaches its fullest depth and greatest influence, when you have enough experience to know what matters, enough courage to discard what doesn't, and enough wisdom to lead a team to bring that vision to life.
So, from Steve Jobs' remarkable reinvention journey, what can we, those of us facing or already past 40, learn? Redefine failure. Jobs' biggest failure, being fired from Apple, became the best medicine for his life. It broke his old identity to build a more complete person. Your shock today may be the space you need to breathe, reflect, and choose a path that better suits your current self. Honor the reinvention pause. Don't rush into another job just out of fear. Allow yourself time to reflect, learn new skills, explore forgotten passions. Like Jobs with Pixar, sometimes what seems like entertainment can become the foundation for your future. See age as an asset, not a burden. You're not 20 anymore, and that's an advantage. You carry a wealth of life experience, a network, self-awareness, and sharp judgment. List all the soft skills and hard-earned lessons you have. They're the most valuable capital for investing in your next chapter. Focus, don't spread thin. Jobs' 4-box grid lesson is a guide for midlife. We often want to prove we can still do a lot, but true power lies in knowing when to let go of good things to pursue something great, something that aligns with your current strengths and passions. Trust connecting the dots. Jobs believed that you can only see the connections between experiences when looking back. Trust that no experience is wasted. Management skills, negotiation abilities, even communication stumbles, all will connect in the future in surprising ways, creating a unique advantage only you will have. Steve Jobs shows us clearly, what happens after 40 isn't the end of the story, but perhaps the greatest plot twist, where the protagonist, with all their scars and wisdom, writes the most heroic chapters. But maybe you think Jobs was a genius, an exception. Then, let's listen to another story about an entirely ordinary man. At 34, he had a stable job with a good salary at a large corporation. But during a business trip to Italy, he was captivated by espresso culture and the community cafe atmosphere. A dream began to form. He faced rejection from over 200 investors, had to give up safety to pursue a crazy idea: bring Italian-style coffee to the U.S. That man was Howard Schultz, and his journey to turn a small coffee shop in Seattle into the global empire Starbucks started at age 34 and exploded after 40. It's another resounding proof you don't need to be a tech genius. You just need keen observation, burning passion, and the courage to start over, no matter your age or circumstances. Let's explore that inspiring story in the next piece, Howard Schultz, How to Build an Empire from Scratch After 40. Because, dear friends, the next chapter of your life could be even more powerful and meaningful than everything that's come before. Write it.